Las Vegas time for Taylor. Hi, Taylor. Welcome to the show.
My name is Taylor Tracy Carlson. I was born August 17th, 1984, right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. All my life, I've loved rock and roll. I've been surrounded by a lot of oldies and classic rock, and over time I've gotten more into the heavier stuff. I've got other interests too, but as anyone who tells you about me will know, rock and roll has always been number one. When I got into my teen years, I started buying every CD that I could find, listening to all the classic rock, hard rock, and metal that was available. And it's no surprise that I became an even bigger fan over the years. In the early 2010s, I started going to concerts on a more regular basis, and in the years that followed, I became a journalist covering a lot of shows here in the Vegas Valley. In more recent years, my interest shifted into photography, so I started taking pictures at a lot of the smaller club and band shows that have been going on around town. And a few years ago, I even got one of my photos on an album cover, so for me, that was a pretty noteworthy achievement. One thing on the music scene that always fascinated me were these jackets that people were wearing. They'd cut the sleeves off their jackets and they'd throw on patches for all of their favorite bands. At one point, a friend of mine who had one of those jackets told me when I was wearing my own jean jacket, I should cut the sleeves off and sew some patches on there. Eventually, I took his advice, but doing it once wasn't enough, so I made another battle jacket, and another, and another. How many battle jackets do I have?
Complete or still working on?
Battle jackets. First, I gotta guess how many you have. Let's go with. Like about 15. I've seen a ton of them.
So yeah, and he also Tyler wanted me to guess how many battle jackets he has. I would probably say around I don't know, maybe 10 to 20. I'm not good at guessing, so.
I think you have maybe 4 or 5.
I'm gonna say 10.
And now, I'm up to 8 battle jackets, and I'm currently working on 9 and 10. The Vegas music scene is one of the best in the world, and I very rarely go more than a week without seeing some kind of live music show. After nearly 10 years of service, I was laid off from my job last summer. This was very unexpected and put me in a pretty tight spot. All my life I've been trying to find a sort of niche in the music industry where I can do something and make a living. Unfortunately, I haven't really had a lot of luck with that so far. I've been thinking, could I go into making a living doing some kind of music journalism? Could I make a living doing narration for rock and roll documentaries? Everyone says I have this good speaking voice for the radio. Or better yet, could I go into business making and selling battle jackets? Right now, I'm not even the most popular person on my own social media channels. That honor would have to go to Murphy. I'm currently working on 2 new jackets. I'm working on another music-themed one, but then I'm also working on a horror movie-themed one. That will be my first non-music jacket, so I'm really looking forward to getting that done. Okay, we got our package here. Let's see what we got. All right, there's our back patch, Nosferatu. That looks very nice, but I really wish they hadn't folded this because that leaves those big ugly creases in the middle. Very nice looking patch other than that, though. And then we've also got Gomez and Morticia here for the Addams Family fans. And they did send us this patch for their store, which is called Grave Shift. And I'm actually going to cut this out and probably use it because we can probably use this as a filler on the jacket, like off to the sides. A lot of the times the sides of your jacket are going to be what's covered up by your arms and your armpits, so it's generally not as big of a deal to get really flashy patches there, so that might actually be the perfect place for this one. Now these patches do have some outer edges we are going to cut off before we sew them on so that we can fit more patches on the jacket.
Think there's a connection between heavy metal and horror movies? Absolutely. Over the top, aesthetic, fantasy, escape, extremism, which is all the reasons why I like heavy metal, why I love heavy metal so much.
I'm also saving a few of the scraps from the edge of these patches just in case we need these for like fillers or decorations on their jacket. So here's what we got on the front of the jacket so far. We got this one's from Tom Devlin's Monster Museum out in Boulder City. I got this military morale patch of Megan, that being one of my most favorite recent horror movies. And then you got the classics like The Exorcist, Night of the Living Dead, Evil Dead, Hellraiser. Gotta have Elvira on there, the queen of horror hosts. Christopher Lee as Dracula. Sven Gulli, who of course hosts all the B horror movies that you can't get enough of.
Connection between horror movies and heavy metal. Yeah, everybody kind of knows the connection. Of course, some big horror guy, like probably 95% of metalheads out there, love horror movies, and they kind of go hand in hand because, you know, metal is kind of a scary-ish, rebellious kind of type of music, and horror movies are the same thing. They're not for everybody, and usually they're pretty scary or evil or whatever, and the correlation with heavy metal music, they go hand in hand for the most part. And I watch as many horror movies as I possibly can.
And then on this side, we got more of like the classic slasher monsters. We got Michael Myers, Ghostface, Jason, Chucky, Pennywise, Freddy Krueger, and then I even got some for Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps on here as well. Yeah, and I mean, you're probably asking why Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps are on there. You're probably saying, you know, this is a horror jacket, aren't those kids shows? And the answer is yes, absolutely they are. But the fact of the matter is, those anthology shows were pretty much the gateway to horror for me, so they deserve as much a place on this jacket as Jason, Freddy, Leatherface, Chucky, what have you. And of course, as I'm sure you can see, we got all that nice big blank space back there. And that is the reason we ordered a back patch. The back patch is going to be the centerpiece of any jacket and the first thing everyone sees, so it's really got to count. Another thing people ask me is, should they clean or wash their battle jackets? Apparently a lot of people think it's like this badge of honor that you should never wash your jacket and just let all the beer and blood stains soak in, and just for the sake of all that is holy, wash your jackets. The people that say not to do this, of course, are the same people that say don't wear earplugs to concerts. So, do you really want to take advice from them? I don't care what people say. Being stinky and being dirty is not a badge of honor, and I will die on this hill. I mean, I wouldn't recommend throwing your jacket through the washing machine because sometimes those sewing jobs can be pretty delicate, but maybe just hand wash it in cold water, maybe just air it out outside, maybe whip out the Febreze. When I'm making my jackets, I also cut off everything that's made out of metal, including the buttons. I never put studs or pins or anything made out of metal on my jackets because at concerts, you're sometimes going to be packed in pretty tightly with people, and in the wrong close quarters and a rowdy crowd, those can quickly become lethal weapons. Not to mention security guards and metal detectors aren't too fond of them. When I'm prepping a jacket before I start sewing things on it, I always cut off and cut out all of the pockets, and I also cut the collar off. I know some people like to leave the collars on, but I prefer to cut those off because they can actually cover the view of some of your higher up patches on the jackets. Some people like to sew patches right on the collar, and if that's what you like to do, more power to you. It's just not the way I go. And some people like to try to find ways to keep the pockets intact on their jackets. I personally don't do this. I just cut them off, cut them out, and sew patches over them. You may be saying, but you want to have that pocket for that storage space. And I refer back to one of my favorite quotes from Hank Hill, that's what pants are for. I only kept a handful of records, but this is what I still have as far as vinyl goes. My favorite album of all time, Def Leppard, On Through the Night. Anthrax's first album, Fistful of Metal. Huey Lewis and the News' self-titled debut album. The soundtrack to the movie Top Gun, the movie I've seen more times than any other. I have Tiffany's first album for some reason. This is a 7-inch single of the theme music to the film They Live. Of course, presented on pink bubblegum vinyl. One of my favorite items, this is a picture disc from the band Girl. This was Phil Lewis's band before LA Guns and Phil Collins' band before Def Leppard. And there's a no-text version of that picture on the back. Another one of my personal favorite items. They actually sent me this because I'm in the Film Critics Society. This is a 7-inch single of the Peaches song from the Super Mario Brothers movie. When I was a teenager growing up, CDs were my preferred way to get my music. Of course, they were fairly inexpensive, compact, and provided pretty good sound quality. For a while there, I got on a vinyl kick as well as a lot of other people around the world, but I had to give that up because, once again, it just got to be a little too expensive, and nowadays, my preferred format is digital. And by digital, I mean stores where you download the songs and own the music. There's a lot of streaming services out there, but I like the freedom of actually owning the music and not having to sit through a bunch of ads. What's your preferred way to listen to music?
Taylor, what's up, buddy? This is Scot with In Theory Audio, back from the Dead merch. Love what you're doing. Can't wait to see how it's going to turn out, and I'm ready to answer some questions.
Hi, my name is Marcus Mason. I have lots of hats that I wear. I'm both a author, biographer, producer of many re-releases as well, and I'm also a musician as well, my own project called Mason.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Goguen. I am from New Brunswick, Canada, and I'm 21 years old.
My favorite format, undeniable, is vinyl. Not because, I enjoy flipping through the album and the artwork and whatnot. The thing I love about vinyl is that if you love 1980s music, 1970s, early 90s music, vinyl was probably the most standard format for the most of the decade. But with that understanding is that not everything has translated itself to CD. I would find obscure bands like Izod and Bad Boy and Equus, for example, that never made itself to CD, but had a really interesting cult following in the AOR hard rock world, but no one's ever heard of them. So where that passion lies, I would go to record stores and shows and find bands I've never heard of and really find amazing bands that I really enjoyed. Where my passion lied in was taking these re-releases, tracking down the musicians, clearing up the publishing, and re-releasing it on CD for the first time so that fans that don't have a record player can now enjoy an expanded, remastered way. So I took these ones and many labels in Australia and Germany itself were all successful in Japan and Europe itself, selling all the copies. It was a really awesome experience trying to get the music to more fans. So that's for me why I love vinyl. There's more content out there and always pleasantly surprised when I find it.
Digital streaming because it's convenient. Next to that is CDs because also convenient. But when I really want to sit down and really have an actual connection with music, it's vinyl. It's always vinyl. I don't listen to vinyl that much because I don't think my turntable is really up to par. So that's an investment for the future.
Preferred format to listening to music. Well, if I had to choose one, would probably be vinyl, because I find vinyl is you hear the bass clearer, the drums and all that, I find you hear like the beat better, but you can still hear it on like still on your like phone and all that, but not as clear as the vinyl records do. And I actually have a few vinyls beside me right now that I want to show you guys. And I don't have a lot because I only started collecting like not too long ago. But my latest vinyls are from the movie Right Here, Right Now from the band Ghost. I haven't played it yet, so there are 2 vinyls in this. These 3. I do have some CDs because when you're on a road trip you can't really listen to the vinyls, so I bought 2 Ghost CDs. Yeah. And I have one that is not Ghost, Panic at the Disco, because if you have a vinyl collection you have to have a little bit of everything, am I right? So that's my little collection I have at the moment.
Spotify. I don't agree with how they pay artists, and I don't like a lot of it, to be honest with you. It just makes sense. It's the easiest thing for me. I don't have CD players in anywhere anymore, you know. I don't have CD players in my car, and it's just a normal subscription. It technically saves me money. I don't need to go out and buy CDs and records in the physical format anymore, even though I do miss it. I was a guy that would read through the lyrics. I'd read through the liner notes. I mean, like, everything, pictures, endorsements, everything in there, artwork, I loved. I miss buying the physical format, but Spotify just makes the most sense to me. It's just too easy.
No matter how many concerts I go to, unlike a lot of people out here, I always wear hearing protection because I absolutely positively do not want to go deaf. What about you guys, though?
Hearing protection, yes. In my early years, I still remember I went to see AC/DC at the Sky Dome 2007. And I remember it was so loud, I couldn't hear anything, it was all muffled, and for days my ears were ringing. So since then, I use a small, compacted earplugs that expand in your ears, and they've been pretty good for me. It muffles up the sound enough that you don't hear any ringing, but at a point that it will at least allow you to hear the music clearly. When I saw Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath, it was absolutely perfect.
Absolutely, I wear, the earplugs that I get at CVS, and I have permanent hearing loss from all the concerts I went as a teenager.
I never went to a real concert before, and I really want to go to one. I want to go to one, but it's like a few hours away, or like a day or 2 away. It's in Toronto, in Ontario. I don't have the money to go to a concert right now. Hopefully in the future I will get to go to one. Pray for me, I get to go to a concert.
Well, do I wear hearing protection at shows, and why? Yeah, I started wearing earplugs about 3 or so years ago. I just figured that at my age and as many shows as I've gone to and as many shows that I am still going to, it only makes sense. I've gotten used to them. I bought some good pairs to still, hear most of the music. It's not just the little phone guys, even though I'll do that sometimes when I forget my good ones. But yeah, I've been to over 500 shows. My ears are only going to be able to take so much, so.
One of the men I want to pay tribute to on my newest music jacket is James Kotak. James Kotak for 20 years was the drummer of the Scorpions. He was one of the very few non-Germans to be a member of the band, but he ended up becoming their longest-serving drummer, being in the band from 1996 to 2016, when his behavior and vices ended up having him booted from the band. Every time I met James Kotak, the guy was certainly a character and had a lot to say. I'll never forget one time I was at a music awards show and I asked him to autograph a record for me after the gig. He took the Sharpie and signed it for me, but then of course right after that he took the Sharpie and scribbled all over my arm with it. And I had to work the next day, so I had to work pretty hard to scrub that off. I don't remember if I even got all that off before work the next day. And I'll never forget the last time I ever met him before he passed away. He complimented me on my, at the time, one and only battle jacket, saying he liked it and it reminded him of what people were wearing in Europe. He was always a great guy and a great drummer, and I want to pay tribute to him on this jacket. He certainly deserves it. Another person I want to pay tribute to on both my horror jacket and my music jacket is Danny the Count Coker. He's probably best known for being the star of the reality TV series Counting Cars, but he also fronts a band called Count 77. He runs and owns the Count's Vamp rock bar and grill venue here in Vegas with his wife Corey, and they book a lot of the best shows with local, national, and international bands. And of course, Danny's rocking the stage with Count 77 on a pretty regular basis. But what a lot of people don't know is back in the day, a TV station his family owned, he actually hosted horror movies under the name Count Cool Rider. And I figure I'm working on a horror movie jacket now, so might be a good idea to pay tribute to him on that as well. This right here is one of my favorite items in my collection. This is something that Danny autographed for me back in probably 2012 when he was interviewed for Las Vegas Weekly magazine. Great guy. He's exactly the same guy in person as he is on the show, and I can't say that for a whole lot of people, so that's definitely a good thing. There is a really great site on here called Lone Star Threadworks. They actually have an eBay store, and I bought several patches from them. They've also done some custom work for me over the years, which, while it's a little expensive, it's usually very nice. I've done several customs from them in the past, and I might be looking at them to do the James Kotak tribute that I wanted to do. So I did find 2 images associated with James Kotak, and then I figure we could also have them do a Count 77 patch. And they even said, too, they have a Babylon AD patch available, a band I've never paid tribute to on any of my other jackets. One of the most frequent and most annoying questions I get when it comes to making battle jackets is, who sews all the patches on your jackets for you? And this, honestly, is borderline offensive because I do all of my own work, by hand, myself. I don't pay anyone to do the work for me. I don't even use a sewing machine. I do everything myself, by hand. Whenever I'm making a jacket, I always put some fabric glue on to hold the patches in place. This is not a permanent solution, it's just more of a supplement, but it's a lot easier than pins, which can poke and crick you when you're sewing. Since I'm paying tribute to a deceased member of the band Scorpions, I thought it might be appropriate to get some of these patches of actual Scorpions on here as well. And these actually look pretty nice. One of the most common questions people ask me is, have I seen all of the bands that are on my jackets? Or should you put a patch on the jacket if you've never seen the band? If you're a fan of a band, whether you've seen them live or not, throw them on there. I would recommend that you know enough about the band that you can talk the talk if someone brings it up in a conversation, but this whole thing about you can't put the band on there if you haven't seen the band, that is complete and utter nonsense. I mean, I love the Beatles and I love the Doors. Both bands were disbanded long before I was born. Did I still put them on my classic rock jacket? Absolutely, because I'm a fan. I know a lot of people like to use sewing machines and things like that. I don't really do that just because you have to sew from some really weird angles sometimes, and of course you're going to have some really weird shaped patches at times as well. The one issue I've been thinking about with potentially making battle jackets for a living is the issue of copyrighted band logos and the like, because I know a lot of people who've done things like this in the past have gotten cease and desists from the bands, doing stuff without their consent, and of course you're using copyrighted band logos and things like that. But I came up with an idea actually, and that's, what if people bring me their own patches and the only thing they're actually paying for is the labor of me sewing the patches on their jackets. That sounds a little more viable and realistic, right? So there is a website here that actually does do custom photo patches. I did find a few of these Count Cool Rider Saturday Fright at the Movies pictures, so we'll see if we can print these into some pretty decent patches. And then there's also an image of the first Spread Eagle album cover, so I'll give that a shot because, again, not finding actual Spread Eagle patches anywhere on here. When and where possible, I always encourage people to buy official band merchandise so their money goes to support the artists that they want to show off on their jackets. However, a lot of more obscure bands, there might not be any patches in existence for them, so that's where the idea of custom patches comes in. So I have to say, this is definitely a little bit of a mixed bag. The Spread Eagle patch, unfortunately, is very faded. It's just a pale red. The print quality is not great, and it's just a tiny little patch. I mean, I'm not even totally sure if I'm going to put this on my jacket or not. The other two look a little better. I mean, we've got this Saturday Fright at the Movies. Of course, want to pay tribute to the Count, who has been keeping rock and roll alive out here in Vegas for so very long now. And that actually looks pretty nice. And then the other one that goes along with that. This one's a little bigger because it's a wider patch. That looks pretty solid. Colors aren't quite as bold as I'd like them to be, but I'll take what I can get because there aren't really a whole lot of patches in this category. Okay, just getting up and checking my emails for the day, and of course, the very first thing we get here is some notice of violation message from the Homeowners Association. They're claiming that supposedly those of us that live in this building let this door, the paint fade away and start chipping, the door to the fire sprinkler riser room. I've lived here for 8 years and I didn't even know this door existed, let alone that it was supposed to be my responsibility to take care of. And now they're saying, we got to hire a contractor to come in here. And isn't the reason I pay a homeowners association so that they can take care of these things? I mean, someone once posted this joke online. What do you call a group of Karens? A homeowners association. And I think that sums this up pretty well. I assure you the next place I live will not have an HOA. Anyway, it's just about time for Eddie Trunk to come on the air. I always like listening to his show. Even with my situation right now that hasn't been the best, I can always look forward to listening to Eddie on the radio. And we still got a few minutes before Eddie comes on. So here's 5 seconds of Murphy. Okay, Eddie's just coming on now, and he actually had something very interesting to say as soon as the show got started.
But I wanted to do this autobiography and I stalled on it. I'm still not ruling out doing it at one point. I need to lock in with somebody to help me with it, though.
What was that he just said?
I need to lock in with somebody to help me with it, though.
I'm an out-of-work writer and editor, and Eddie Trunk wants to write an autobiography, and he needs a writer and editor. This to me sounds like a match made in heaven. And he just said that tomorrow he's going to be interviewing Geezer Butler, the bassist of Black Sabbath, at the SiriusXM studios over at the Wynn. I haven't checked out the SiriusXM studios over at the Wynn yet, and I've never met Geezer Butler before, and I've got to go ahead and ask Eddie Trunk if he needs someone to co-edit and write this book with him. So I'm going to be killing like 3 birds with 1 stone tomorrow. Today we're going to pay a visit to the Antique Mall of America, and on the way back, it's my friend Lynn's birthday, so we're actually going to take him his present. And he said he actually wants to be interviewed for this program, so we'll see what he has to say. We have a 4K ultra high def.
And I will show you my first vinyl that I bought was this one right here. The Impero album from the band Ghost. Yes. And when I got this, I had no idea how to take care of it, so it skips a lot. Let's just say I'm still a newcomer and I'm still learning, so.
What we call here in Las Vegas, he is the #1 rock fan in the Las Vegas area. Taylor Carlson on the show tonight. People like this are the reason we get to do what we do and live the dream, the fans. And not only is this guy a true rock fan, probably the #1 rock fan in Las Vegas, guys like this will document the accomplishments of guys like me, and it'll be around forever. And really glad to be a part of this, and really glad to have this guy on the streets of rock and roll. Welcome, Taylor Carlson. Every rock star in Las Vegas sees you walk into the room and we light up, man. We know Taylor's here. Somebody who really appreciates what we do, somebody who enjoys what we do. Every time we see you walk into the room, it's a wonderful thing. And not only being a fan, but putting that love and passion for this music into print. Vegas Valley Classic Rock Society. Tell us about that. And hopefully there's lots more to come for you. We thank you so much for being so much a part of our lives, our music, and the Las Vegas rock and roll scene. Taylor Carlson on the streets of rock and roll. Thank you.